Throughout the history of America, it has been said that we are a nation built from immigrants. Over 400 years, there have been all kinds of people who come to America for many different reasons. Some come for freedom of religious practice, some come to escape war, and mostly, some just come for the hope of a better life. Between the years of 1882 and 1914, about 20 million immigrants came to the United States. There were huge movements of immigrants coming to the U.S., and starting in about 1910, the rate of Mexican immigrants rose from 20,000 immigrants per year to 50 to 100,000 immigrants per year. Around the same time period, the U.S. was also experiencing an equally large movement of immigrants coming from East and Southern Europe as well as Asia, although at this point in time, Mexicans were not viewed as an issue. In fact, because of the lobbying of the agricultural industry stating how essential these immigrant workers were, they were not even included in the quotas which were ran in 1924 under the Immigration Act. Things were looking great for the relationship between Mexican immigrants and the U.S. for a few years. Then, the Great Depression hit in 1929. This caused a huge economic downfall and completely ruined this great new relationship between Mexican immigrants and the U.S. Suddenly, these beloved Mexican immigrants found themselves without jobs and facing forms of unofficial repatriation. Hundreds of thousands of immigrants found themselves being sent back to Mexico under these actions, and suddenly, Mexicans found themselves in an unwelcome place they had just begun to feel comfortable in. Being that they were used to the money they were making in the U.S., many Mexican families began struggling. We began to see large numbers of Mexican immigrants attempting to enter the United States illegally, causing people to start looking at Mexican people as menaces contrary to the way they were viewed not so long ago. This went on for quite some time. Then, with the United States facing a time of trouble in the 1940s with World War II at hand, and having many of the people gone off to fight at war, they introduced the Bracero program. This was an initiative introduced under the United States that was to assist in the filling of vacant jobs, meanwhile benefiting the citizens of Mexico by initially stating that they would be provided with basic human rights such as proper living accommodations, sanitation, food, and water. They were also promised that they would be making a minimum of 30 cents an hour, which was much more than these people were making in Mexico. On paper, this plan sounded incredible, and had many Mexican immigrants rushing to America for a chance to land themselves a contract. In the early stages of the program, there were not many admissions. Up until the war ended, they did not see a spike in these numbers. But by the time the program ended in 1964, the U.S. had admitted more than 4.5 million braceros into the program. With this seemingly incredible offer, Mexican immigrants began to feel hopeful that they would again form a strong relationship with the United States and would be able to provide for their families once again. Although what the Mexican citizens ended up facing was not an economic prosperity, but instead something closer to a form of unofficial slavery. All the rights that they had been ensured by their contracts were stripped from them. They were forced to live in terrible environments that were sometimes so hot they would cause dehydration or even death. Not to mention, they did not receive nearly anything that they were supposed to. They worked for 9 to 12 hours a day, without breaks sometimes, and would find themselves making nothing on their paychecks. Instead, they were told that all the money that they had earned was used to cover their terrible shelter and food that they were being provided, something that they had been told would be provided for them. Every one of their paychecks were also having taxes removed and were being used towards something that they later found out did not even exist. They were treated so inhumanely. They were forced to work extremely hard with no relief, and were even at times threatened if they did not do as they were told. Some braceros ended up dying from exhaustion or illness. Many were also killed in crazy freak accidents resulting from negligence. Unfortunately for them, they had signed contracts stating that their families back at home would be taken care of should anything happen to them. But often at times, their wives and children never received any of the compensation they were promised. Many women and children suffered as they had no idea what had become of their husband or father, and ultimately the women were forced to find a way to fend for themselves as well as their children. The Bracero program took advantage of many Mexican immigrants and caused a lot of pain and sadness for many braceros as well as their family members. To this day, many have not received proper compensation from the United States, and many never will. Although after all of this, we still see many Mexican immigrants attempting to enter the country every single day. You would think after the way they had been treated, they would not want to come back. But that just shows you the type of life these people face in Mexico. They are still wanting to risk everything for a chance that maybe they can make themselves a better life in America. Perhaps, after the way we've treated them, and simply by looking at their history of being good, hard-working citizens, we could consider simplifying their ability to become a United States citizen.